They say curiosity is harmless, a sign of youth, of intelligence. But what happens when that curiosity twists into something unspeakable? In 1997, Japan was rocked by a crime that seemed impossible to comprehend. A boy, just 14 years old, lured, killed, and mutilated a classmate. Not out of hatred, not even out of impulse, but because he wanted to know what it would feel like. What followed wasn't just a tragedy, it was a turning point. A nation questioned its laws, its schools, and the very idea of innocence. This is the case of Boy A. The name he gave himself was Sakakibara Seito. The world remembers it as the Kobe child murders. Let's begin. On the morning of May 27th, students at Tomogaoka Junior High arrived to find something unthinkable. The severed head of 11-year-old Jun Hase, a student from a nearby elementary school, placed right in front of the school gate. Stuffed in the boy's mouth was a note written in red ink. The note read, "This is the beginning of the game. Try to stop me if you can, you stupid police. I desperately want to see people die. It thrills me. Murder is the only way I can confirm my existence. A bloody judgment was needed for my 10 years of great bitterness." The note was signed with a name the police hadn't seen before, Sakakibara. It also included strange English phrases too, like shul killer with double L's. Investigators noted the theatrical, taunting tone reminiscent of the Zodiac killer letters in the US. Then, on June 6th, the Kobe Shimbun newspaper received a brown envelope, no return address. Inside was a 1,400-word letter in red ink containing 6 kanji. Sake, which means alcohol, oni, meaning demon, para, meaning rose, sei, saint, and to. So, put together, Sakakibara Seito. In this letter, Sakakibara wrote that killing made him feel liberated. It was the only time he felt free from the hatred and emptiness he lived with. He also lashed out at Japan's education system, calling it a compulsory machine that created people like him. But the media misread his alias. They printed it as Onibara, which means Demon Rose, and Sakakibara wasn't happy about it. He sent another letter to the police, this time with a threat. If anyone misread his name again or ruined his mood, he would kill 3 vegetables a week. The word he used was yasai, which means vegetables, but he was referring to people. It later came out that his parents had once told him to imagine people as vegetables to calm his nerves. That advice got twisted into something else entirely. Police tracked the handwriting, the postal routes, and linguistic clues. Eventually, they found the sender. And the truth shocked the country. It wasn't a drifter, not an adult. It was a 14-year-old junior high school student. His identity was protected under juvenile law, so the media referred to him only as Boy A. Later, he was identified as Shinichiro Azuma. And Jun Hase wasn't his only victim. On February 10th, 2 girls were attacked with a rubber mallet in Suma Ward. One was seriously injured. They told their father the attacker wore a school uniform, but when he asked a nearby junior high for student photos, the school refused. Even after a police request, they didn't cooperate. Later, it turned out the attacker was their own student. When criticized, the school responded by saying the incident wouldn't have happened if the victims had protected themselves better. On March 16, 1997, around 12:25 p.m., at Yugadai Park in Suma Ward, Kobe, Azuma wandered through an elementary school and spotted a 10-year-old girl, Ayaka Yamashita. He asked her where he could wash his hands, and she offered to help, walking him to the spot. But when they arrived, Azuma told her to turn around, and then struck her repeatedly with a hammer before fleeing the scene. Ayaka was rushed to the hospital and died a week later, on March 23rd, from a brain contusion. Just 10 minutes after that attack, Azuma approached another third-grade girl. This time, he stabbed her in the abdomen with a 13-centimeter blade. She survived, but spent 2 weeks in the hospital. The knife had pierced her stomach and stopped just short of hitting a major vein. That night, Azuma wrote in his diary. He described the experience as an experiment, saying he wanted to see how fragile human beings were. He added, "I hit her a few times, but I was too excited to remember how many times I exactly hit her." A week later, news of Ayaka's death spread through the media. Azuma's mother mentioned it to him in passing, not knowing her own son was the killer. In his diary, Azuma wrote, "There is no sign of me being caught. I thank you, Pamoidu Kishin. Please continue to protect me." There's no confirmed meaning behind Pamoidu Kishin, but from how he wrote it, it seemed Azuma saw it as a kind of god or protective figure. 2 months later, on May 24th, Azuma left home on his bike. He said he felt the mood to kill. After cycling around town for about 10 minutes, he passed Taibata Elementary School and spotted a boy walking alone, Shun Hase. Azuma recognized Hase from the Nakayoshi class, a special education class for children with physical disabilities. Though they weren't close, Azuma's younger brother was in the same class, so he knew Hase. And that familiarity helped him lure the boy. At Azuma's house, Hase was cheerful, smiling while playing with a pet turtle. As Azuma watched him, a thought crossed his mind. "Oh, you are smaller than me. I can kill you." He then offered to take Hase to see another turtle near a small hill called Tank Mountain. But at the top, there was no pond, just an old cable TV facility. And that is where Azuma attacked. Azuma came prepared. Wearing gloves, he crept up behind Shun Hase, wrapped his arm around the boy's neck, and began to strangle him. Hase fought back, crying, flailing, but Azuma forced him down and pressed harder. When his arms began to ache and no weapon was at hand, he removed his shoelaces and used them to finish the job. Once the boy stopped moving, Azuma leaned in, checked his heartbeat, and smiled. He later wrote that Hase didn't die easily, and that made the victory feel even sweeter, like winning a prize. But now, he had a body to hide. He tried to break into a locked facility nearby, failed, and went to steal a saw and a new padlock. Returning, he cut the old lock, dragged Hase's body inside, and shoved it under the floor. The saw was hidden under some leaves. That evening, he met up with friends, acted normal, and went home. But sleep didn't bring peace. It brought new curiosity. What would it feel like to cut a human body? He'd done it to animals. Now, he wanted to try it on a person. The next day, May 25th, he returned with a saw, a knife, and plastic bags to catch the blood. He retrieved the body, held Hase's head, and began sawing through the neck. Blood sprayed, bone resisted, and then something new. He felt aroused. When the head came off, he stared at it in awe and climaxed. But it didn't end there. Thinking the body's soul still lingered, he stabbed the eyes, ripped the eyelids, and tried to cut out the tongue. Then he drank the blood, describing the taste as metallic, and told himself he was cleansing his soul with Hase's innocence. Disappointed by how the head looked, he buried it beneath a tree and gave the saw to a friend, who later tossed it into Mukuatano Pond. That night, Azuma lay awake again, not with guilt, but with more questions. How does a human head change over time? He planned to return soon, just to see. Meanwhile, back at the Suma police station, Hase's case had been upgraded. At 11:40 a.m. on May 26, police launched a full-scale investigation. Over 150 officers were dispatched to search for him. Azuma, unfazed, went about his day as usual. He visited Irikano Pond to take another look at the body. He stared at it for 6 minutes, observing the decomposition. But this time, he felt bored. It didn't give him the rush he expected. Then a new idea struck him. He would provoke the police. He decided to leave the head somewhere bold and unexpected, his own school, Tomogaoka Junior High. He figured no one would suspect a student would display a severed head at his own gate. In his mind, it was also a way to shift blame. He told himself it wasn't his fault. The school, the system, was responsible. He brought the head home in his bicycle basket. No one else was there. Quietly, he washed it with a hose, removing dirt, leaves, and fingerprints, preparing it like it was part of a staged performance. As he combed the hair, he felt another wave of arousal and ejaculated again. But he didn't stop there. That night, he wrote a letter designed to throw investigators off. He borrowed language from books and manga, including Paramon no Kazoku. One phrase stuck, the great grudge of many years. It sounded like the words of a grown man with a vendetta. He swapped burning judgment for bloody judgment, a nod to what he'd done. On May 27th, sometime after midnight, Azuma placed the head in his mother's bicycle basket and rode through the empty streets. Around 1 to 2 a.m., he reached the school. He tried setting the head against the white gate wall, but it wouldn't stay. So he forced the neck down onto one of the gate's sharp metal points, impaling it. Then he stepped back, calmly admiring his work before heading home. After his arrest, Azuma's trial was held behind closed doors, as a standard for juvenile cases. But due to public outrage, the court made a rare exception and released his psychiatric evaluation. Azuma had no brain abnormalities. Hormones, chromosomes, and scans were normal. He was mentally competent at the time of the crime. He wasn't suffering from a split personality, but did show signs of depersonalization and dissociation. Still, experts concluded the murders weren't caused by mental illness. Instead, they were driven by something deeper: violent sexual urges, sadism, and a complete lack of empathy. He was what they called an intuitive image type, someone with the ability to clearly recall and obsess over visual memories. The evaluators concluded Azuma wasn't insane. He wasn't mentally delayed. He was disturbingly ordinary. So, what happened? The findings suggested deep-rooted emotional issues. Azuma had a weak sense of self-worth, lacked empathy, and developed a hollow, nihilistic view of life from a young age. Unlike many Japanese households where the father is strict, in Azuma's case, his mother held all the authority. His father was largely absent and emotionally distant, and his mother imposed harsh discipline. From elementary school, Azuma was held up as a role model to his younger siblings, but at the cost of emotional warmth. If he came home after 5 p.m., he wasn't allowed inside. When his younger sibling was born, Azuma felt abandoned by his mother. He later said he never felt truly loved by her. The only person who gave him warmth was his grandmother. When he was scolded or punished by his mother, it was his grandmother who wiped his tears, hugged him, and spoiled him. She even bought him a dog, which Azuma called Grandma's dog. She was the only one who could calm his anger. Then, in 5th grade, both the grandmother and the dog died. To Azuma, the world suddenly turned cold. The person who had protected him was gone. That's when his obsession with death began. He started killing animals, first frogs and lizards, then cats. He once confessed to a friend that he had killed around 20 cats. His school noticed strange behavior. Teachers and students at Tomogaoka Junior High recalled him pulling pranks, sometimes cruel ones. He once hid or burned classmates' shoes, hit students on the head with a tennis racket, and slashed their bikes with box cutters. In art class, when told to make something with clay, he shaped it into a figure, then stabbed it with scissors. His homeroom teacher said his face rarely showed emotion. He avoided eye contact and often seemed detached, like his mind was somewhere else. While some of his behavior still fell within what would be considered adolescent eccentricity, it clearly leaned toward delinquency. In high school, teachers tried focusing more attention on him, and outwardly his behavior appeared to improve. But behind the scenes, his internal world was warping further. The evaluation confirmed something horrifying. Azuma's sexual desire was fused with violence. For most people, sexual and violent impulses separate during early development. But in his case, they were intertwined. He felt aroused by destruction, especially the destruction of life. Killing cats excited him. That wasn't enough anymore. He wanted something more, something that gave him a deeper rush. So he turned to humans. When asked about women, he said he had no interest. As for his victims, he said they were simply in the wrong place when his urges surged. The final psychiatric conclusion: Azuma had what would be considered, in adults, antisocial personality disorder. The experts recommended long-term treatment to address his personality disorder and dangerous tendencies. He was sent to a medical juvenile detention center and ordered to pay 80 million yen in alimony to Ayaka Yamashita's family. And of course, the public felt justice hadn't been served. There were protests. The case reignited debates about Japan's juvenile law. And in 2000, the government responded, lowering the minimum age of criminal responsibility from 16 to 14. But even that wasn't enough for some. After the 2004 murder of Satomi Mitarai by an 11-year-old girl, a case now widely known as the Nevaratan incident, discussions began around lowering the age even further, possibly to 11. Then, on January 1st, 2005, Shinichiro Azuma was released from the detention center. He was now legally an adult. The news reignited public anger. People protested, demanding he be sent to prison. But legally, his sentence had ended. And just like that, he was free again. Interestingly, despite Azuma's detailed confession and the gruesome diary entries, not everyone believed he was the real killer. In fact, some, like the former principal of his junior high school and even a few lawyers, thought he might have been wrongfully accused. They pointed out several contradictions in the case. One major detail: at one point in the investigation, police suggested the killer was left-handed, but Azuma was right-handed. His confession was also unusually complex, filled with metaphors, similes, and figurative language that didn't seem to match his academic ability. Azuma had a reputation for poor grades, and yet the way he wrote and spoke during interrogation was oddly sophisticated for a 14-year-old boy. Then there were inconsistencies in eyewitness accounts. One person said they saw the head placed under the school name plaque at 5:30 a.m. A postman said he saw it on the left side of the iron gate at 6:30 a.m. 10 minutes later, the school janitor said the head was lying in the center of the gate. And here's another thing. The human head accounts for about 12% of total body weight. For an 11-year-old like Hase, it would have weighed at least 5 kilograms. The gate was 198 centimeters high. Azuma, at the time, was just 160 centimeters. So how did a small-framed 14-year-old manage to lift and fix a 5-kilogram head on a gate nearly 2 meters high? Witnesses also reported seeing a black Nissan Bluebird with blacked-out windows parked near the scene. A man in his 30s, around 170 centimeters tall, was seen wandering around both the gate and Tang Mountain. One witness saw a large black bag hidden in the shrubbery at the north gate. Yet, police never questioned them about this suspicious car or man. On June 30th, the Hyogo Prefectural Police officially stated that the black car was unrelated to the case, but doubts lingered. According to the official version, Azuma mutilated Hase's body at the scene where it was found, under the cable TV antenna base. But some people questioned that story. Why? Because just an hour and a half before the police arrived at 1:30 p.m. on May 27th, a city employee and 7 staff members had been at the exact spot. They inspected the fence and the concrete area where the body was discovered, and they reported seeing nothing unusual. No blood, no signs of struggle. The ground was clean. On top of that, the cut on Hase's neck was strangely precise, so straight that some suspected it might have been made with an electric saw, not the manual saw Azuma allegedly used. That detail made some people wonder, was Azuma really the one who dismembered the body? Or was there something more that hadn't been revealed? There was even speculation that whoever mailed the postcard used a method to avoid leaving fingerprints by coating the stamp. That kind of knowledge, critics said, sounded more like something a professional criminal would know. One human rights lawyer even suggested that the police may have manipulated or guided Azuma's confession, but with no solid proof, it remained just that, a theory. After his release, Azuma quietly began a new life under a guarantor in Saitama Prefecture. He was said to have changed, rehabilitated, a completely different person. Then, on June 2015, he published an autobiography titled Zekka, Song of Despair, under the alias Former Boy A. In the book, he expressed regret and described the murders in shocking, graphic detail. Hase's family tried to block its release, but the book still hit the shelves, and it quickly climbed to the top of Japan's bestseller lists. It was reported that the book made around 15 million yen. His parents claimed they would give the entire amount to the victims' families, but rumors spread that Azuma had kept the money and used it to build a house. The bereaved families later said they had never received a single yen, and that more than money, what they wanted was justice. Then came something even more controversial. Shortly after the book's release, several Japanese magazines, including Shukan Bunshun and Josei 7, received a letter from Azuma. In it, he announced he had launched a personal website. It wasn't what people expected. The site listed his height, weight, and hometown. Some thought maybe he'd use it to share his side of the story or issue a formal apology. Instead, he posted bizarre, photoshopped images of a nude man, implied to be himself. He used the site to promote the book and launched a paid email newsletter that gave exclusive details about the murders for 800 yen per month. This outraged the public. Many saw it as a final insult that Azuma was now profiting off the lives he destroyed. Years have passed and Azuma has never faced further punishment. He walks free, his identity protected, while the families of Ayaka Yamashita and Jun Hase continue to live with the pain of what happened. Now, what do you think? Should Japan have lowered the age of criminal responsibility even further? Was Azuma truly rehabilitated or just hiding behind a new phase? And how should we respond when a killer uses their story for profit? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And that is all for today. Thanks for watching.